To walk the path of truth is a matter of the heart, not of the mind. Let your heart be your guide, not the head upon your shoulders. Be among those who know their ego, not those who merely erase it. Shams Tabrizi. There are truths that cannot be understood by thought. They can only be felt, breathed in through the quiet openings of the heart. This path, my friend, is not walked with the feet, nor measured with the intellect. It is a path of burning, of being consumed, of surrendering all that you think you are until only love remains. That is what Shams Tabrizi meant when he said, "To walk the path of truth is a matter of the heart, not of the mind." The mind can describe the journey, but only the heart can walk it. You see, the mind wants to own, to define, to control. It seeks safety in certainty. But the heart knows no certainty, only trust. It walks into the unknown and calls it home. The mind seeks God as an idea. The heart becomes a mirror for His light. That is why the mystics always spoke of love, not knowledge. For love burns away the veils that separate you from the beloved, while knowledge builds new walls of pride. When Shams met Rumi, he saw a man full of books, full of words, a scholar whose mind had memorized oceans, but the fire of his heart was quiet, sleeping beneath the ashes of intellect. Shams, the wandering sun, came not to teach him more, but to set him ablaze. And when that meeting happened, the world witnessed a man reborn, not a man of knowledge, but a man of love. This is the path you are being called to, my friend, not to accumulate, but to burn, not to add more to yourself, but to be emptied of yourself. God cannot fill what is already full. When the prophet said, "There is a piece of flesh in the body, and if it is sound, the whole body is sound," truly, it is the heart. Bukhari, Muslim. He was not speaking of the organ that beats, but of the inner temple where the divine speaks. If that inner heart is awakened, your entire being becomes a prayer. Yet so many live with their hearts veiled, guided only by the noise of their minds. The mind says, "Protect yourself." The heart says, "Trust." The mind says, "You are alone." The heart whispers, "You were never apart." The mind fears loss, but the heart knows that nothing real can ever be lost. And so, to walk the path of truth, you must learn to listen again, not to your thoughts, but to that silent pulse beneath them. Shams would often wander in the markets of Konya, speaking with beggars, bakers, and drunkards. He saw the same divine spark in all of them. He used to say, "A jewel remains a jewel, even if it falls into the mud." That is how he saw humanity, covered in dust perhaps, but radiant beneath. When he looked at you, he didn't see your sins or your story. He saw the light buried beneath your fear. That is what it means to be among those who know their ego, not those who merely erase it. Many mistake spirituality for escape and attempt to destroy the self, to silence desire, to erase the I. But Shams never taught erasure. He taught transformation. To know the ego is to see its illusions clearly. To erase it blindly is to build another ego that takes pride in being humble. Real humility is born when you see yourself as nothing, yet feel infinite love pouring through you. In the Quran, God says, "We are closer to Him than His jugular vein." 50:16. Think of that closeness. You do not need to go anywhere to find Him. You only need to remove what blocks your sight. Every thought, every judgment, every fear is a veil. Remove them one by one, and you will find that what you were seeking has always been within you. not as an idea, but as presence. The heart is that sacred place where the divine and the human meet. When you listen deeply, when you become still enough, you begin to hear a voice that is not your own. It does not argue or explain, it simply is. This voice of love, of guidance, has been speaking since before you were born. The saints and prophets only teach you how to listen again. The mind, clever as it is, cannot hear that voice. It analyzes, doubts, and calculates. It wants proof, it wants logic. But the path of truth begins where logic ends. That is why Shams said, "Let your heart be your guide, not the head upon your shoulders." Because the head will always lead you in circles, back to yourself. But the heart, if you follow it, will lead you beyond yourself, into the infinite. Think of how Rumi changed when he followed his heart. He was once a respected scholar, surrounded by students and books. But after Shams touched his soul, he began to whirl, to dance like a flame seeking the sun. He became a lover, not a teacher. And in that transformation, he found what all his knowledge could not give him: union. That is the fruit of walking by the heart. To walk by the heart does not mean rejecting reason. It means placing reason in its proper place, as a servant, not a master. The intellect is a lamp. The heart is the dawn. The lamp can help you through the night, but when the sun rises, you no longer need it. In your life, perhaps you have felt moments when reason could not help you. A loss that broke you. A love that didn't make sense. A moment of silence where all your answers failed. These are not accidents. They are invitations, sacred cracks through which the light of your heart can enter. Every heartbreak is a doorway. Every failure, a hidden mercy. The mystics knew this. They wept not out of despair, but because they saw God's hand even in their pain. Once, a disciple asked Rabia al-Adawiya, "Do you love God?" She said, "Yes." He asked, "Do you hate the devil?" She replied, "My love for God leaves no room for hatred." That is the power of the heart. It expands until even the idea of an enemy dissolves. For when you see through the eyes of the heart, there is only the beloved, wearing countless faces.
And yet, the journey to such a heart is not easy. It requires the courage to be broken. It requires silence. It requires patience with yourself. The ego will resist. It will whisper that surrender is weakness. But the Prophet said, "The strongest among you is the one who controls his anger." That control does not come from suppression, but from awareness. When you know your ego, you are no longer its prisoner. This is what Shams meant by be among those who know their ego, not those who merely erase it. To know your ego is to see how it moves, how it reacts, how it fears. You watch it as you would watch a child throwing a tantrum, with patience and understanding. Slowly, through this awareness, it softens. It becomes a doorway rather than a wall. The Sufis never fought the ego, they befriended it. They turned it from an enemy into a servant. They taught it humility through love, not violence. When you stop fighting with yourself, you begin to heal. When you stop trying to be perfect, you begin to be real. In today's world, we are taught to live from the head, to analyze, to compare, to plan. We build careers, identities, and even relationships from the mind. But the result is often emptiness. We have everything, yet feel nothing. We move fast, yet go nowhere. And then, one day, a whisper within asks, "Is this all there is?" That whisper is the beginning of the path. If you've heard that whisper, my friend, know that the journey has already begun. the beloved has called your name. Now the question is, will you answer with your mind or your heart? The mind will say, it's not practical. The heart will say, leap. Shams would always choose the leap, because the leap, though it looks like falling, is really flying. I too have known the moments when my mind tried to control everything, when I thought I could think my way to peace. But peace is not a thought, it is a fragrance that arises when the heart opens. It comes in moments of surrender, when you stop trying to fix, to achieve, to prove. It comes when you simply sit in the presence of your own being and say, "Here I am, Lord." Shams walked this truth. He lived as a man of fire, not fear. He was unpredictable, wild and free, because he had nothing to defend. The world could not understand him. Even Rumi's disciples were jealous of his presence. But that is the fate of those who live from the heart. They do not fit in the boxes of the mind. They love beyond reason, speak beyond fear, and walk beyond logic. The heart, when awakened, is like a sun. It gives without asking. It shines without choosing. It burns everything that is not real, and what remains is love. The heart, my friend, is not a place of comfort, it is a place of transformation. It does not promise safety, it promises truth. And truth, when it arrives, will shake everything false within you. It will strip you of your illusions, of your masks, of your little certainties, yet beneath the ruin, it will reveal what was always pure, always whole.
You might think the mind protects you, but in truth, it cages you. It fears the unknown, while the heart longs for it. The mind wants to understand life, the heart wants to live it. And so long as you remain imprisoned in thoughts, you will never taste the fragrance of what is real. To know God, you must first become silent, not silent in words, but in being. Rumi once said, "Silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation." Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the absence of self. When the noise of the ego quiets, you begin to hear the rhythm of existence, the heartbeat of the divine echoing within your own chest. That is the moment you realize that your heart is not separate from His. But how do we live from the heart in this restless world? A world where we are pulled in 1,000 directions, where noise surrounds us and the soul barely has room to breathe. The answer is simple yet demanding: by remembrance. Dhikr, not the mechanical repetition of words, but the living remembrance that fills every breath. To remember is to awaken. To forget is to fall asleep again. When the Quran says, "Truly in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest," 13:28, it is not speaking of a ritual. It is describing a state of being. It means to be aware of Him in all things, in the laughter of a child, in the silence of the stars, in your own pain. The more you remember, the more the veil thins. There was once a dervish who asked his master, "How can I find God?" The master replied, "Seek Him where you lost Him." The dervish thought deeply, then said, "I lost Him when I became busy with myself." The master smiled, "Then that is where you will find Him again." You see, the path is not somewhere far away. It is here, in this very breath, in this very moment. The door of truth never closes, only your attention turns away. When you come back to the heart, you come back to God. The heart is the meeting point of opposites, where joy and sorrow, gain and loss, life and death all dissolve into one stream. When you live from the heart, you no longer divide the world into good and bad. You begin to see that everything, even pain, carries a hidden grace. Shams often said, "Do not complain about your wounds. They are where the light enters you." Every time life breaks you, it is not to punish you, but to open you. Just as the seed must crack before the flower can bloom, so must the heart break before it can shine.
What feels like destruction is often the beginning of creation. I once met a seeker who said, "I have prayed for years, but I feel nothing." I told him, "You are still praying with your head. Try praying with your heart." He looked at me in confusion. I said, "When you pray, let go of trying to reach God. Just sit as if He is already there and whisper from your deepest longing." Weeks later, he came back weeping, saying, "I finally felt Him." The truth is, God was never absent, only His heart had been asleep.
The prophet said, "God does not look at your forms or your wealth, but at your hearts and your deeds. Because your heart is the true measure of who you are, not what you know, not what you do, but how open you are to love." Every saint, every prophet, every lover of God, they were not extraordinary by intellect. They were extraordinary by love. In the early days, Shams was misunderstood by many. His words burned like fire because they came from a heart that refused to compromise. He once said, "The way of love is not a subtle argument. The door there is devastation." What he meant was that love is not polite. It does not ask for permission. It destroys what you are not, so that what you truly are may rise. This destruction, this surrender, is what frightens most seekers. They want God without losing themselves. But the truth is, you cannot hold both. You must be willing to disappear, not into nothingness, but into everything. When you let go of the small self, you discover the self that has no boundary. That is the secret of all mystics. Do you know why the moth flies into the flame? Because in its heart, it remembers the sun. It longs to return to that light, even if it means dying in the process. The Sufi is that moth. He knows that real life begins where the false self ends. The fire of love does not kill, it reveals. In the Quran, God says, "Wherever you turn, there is the face of God." But how few truly see it. The heart that is still sees His face in every direction, even in the mirror of its own reflection. The heart that loves sees no separation. And when you no longer see separation, peace becomes your natural state. In this path, peace is not something you find at the end, it is something you uncover within. Each act of honesty, each moment of surrender, removes another layer of dust, until one day you realize that your heart itself was the Kaaba all along, the house where the beloved dwells. Yet to live from such a heart requires courage. It means forgiving when you are hurt, giving when you are empty, loving when you are afraid. The world may call this foolish, but heaven calls it faith. Shams lived by that faith. So did Yunus Emre, who said, "The lover's religion is love alone." When you love, truly love, you transcend religion, you transcend reason, you become the very essence of prayer. But love is not sentimentality. It is not the soft comfort of pleasant feelings. It is a fire that demands everything. To love God is to allow Him to rewrite your story. It is to say, "Burn away what is false in me, so that only you remain." The saints did not find joy by escaping suffering. They found joy because they saw God even in suffering. My friend, perhaps you are in a season of confusion. Perhaps you feel far from the light. Do not despair. Even your longing is holy. Even your questions are prayers in disguise. The Beloved hides himself that you may seek, and he makes you seek that you may find. Your very restlessness is the rope by which he pulls you nearer. There is a story told of Bayezid Bastami. When asked how he found God, he said, "I knocked on the door until it opened. But when it opened, I realized that I had been knocking from inside." That is the mystery. You are already home, but you have forgotten. The path is not a journey toward God, it is a journey away from forgetfulness.
So, when you sit tonight in silence, do not seek him elsewhere. Sit within your own heart and whisper, "Here I am." That is enough. The Beloved hears even the unspoken sigh. When you begin to walk from the heart, everything changes. The world does not become easier, but it becomes sacred. The ordinary becomes divine. Washing dishes becomes remembrance. A conversation becomes worship. Every act becomes prayer. Because the heart no longer divides, it sees only one. The saints taught that there are three kinds of seekers: those who love for reward, those who love out of fear, and those who love for love's sake. The last are the rarest. They do not ask for paradise, nor do they fear hell. Their paradise is his presence. Their hell is his absence. Shams belonged to them, and he invited Rumi and all of us into that same madness of love. Do not fear this madness. It is the only sanity worth having. The world praises cleverness, but the heavens praise love. The intellect builds empires, but love builds eternity. Every prophet came not to teach laws, but to awaken hearts. Every revelation was a love letter from the infinite to the finite, and every prayer is the reply written by the heart that remembers. So, my dear friend, walk this path bravely. Trust your heart even when the mind trembles. When you feel lost, whisper his name. When you doubt, remember his mercy. When you fall, rise again, for every step, even the ones backward, are still part of the dance. The journey of the heart is endless. Every arrival is only the beginning of another unfolding. As Rumi said, the wound is the place where the light enters you. So let yourself be broken, for in your breaking you will find the whole. And when you find that place of stillness within, cherish it, protect it. Let your heart remain soft even when the world grows hard, because softness is strength. It is the fragrance of faith. In the end, all teachings, all scriptures, all masters point to one truth. There is only love. Everything else is shadow. The more you love, the more you understand. The more you understand, the less you need to speak, until, like Shams, your very silence becomes a sermon. So tonight, I leave you with this: walk by the heart. Let love be your compass, surrender your mind to wonder, and let every breath become remembrance. The path of truth does not lead away from the world, it leads you deeper into its soul. And if, as you listen,
something within you begins to stir, a warmth, a stillness, a spark. Do not ignore it. That is your heart remembering what it has always known. If this journey speaks to your soul, write in the comments, "My heart is my guide." And if these words have touched you, my friend, subscribe to this space of love and remembrance, because on this path, you are never alone. May your nights be filled with peace, your heart with courage, and your soul with light. And remember always, to walk the path of truth is a matter of the heart, not of the mind. Let your heart be your guide, not the head upon your shoulders. Be among those who know their ego, not merely those who erase it. The path of the heart is not an escape, it is the return. And love is the only way home.